friend of mine whose name is Trabian, who really was the one who opened my eyes to that framing. I think another way of deficit framing is to think of poverty porn, right? Just to go in and show just pictures of just impoverished people and not to understand them, right? My goal in documentary is like, I don't want to see poverty porn. I want to understand people, and I want to understand their motivations and why they do what they do. And I think often in these stories you deficit frame, right? You talk about, I remember getting in a big argument with one of my producers. We were doing a story on a young woman. Her name was Glorious Menifee. And what a great name, Glorious. And the first pass of her script came back, and it was, Glorious's mother was a crack addict and her father is an alcoholic. And I'm like, oh my, holy shit. we can't, on one hand, it's true, but imagine if I introduced you with a list of like all your parents' horrible things that they did, you'd just be horrified. And Glorious is a lovely young woman, and the story we were telling is of a woman who's trying to overcome a lot of odds to figure out how to get into college. And it really was Glorious's story. And I remember thinking, like, you can deficit frame, right? You can literally give people the list of everything working against them. Or you could say, we all asset frame our own children, right? I would say, oh, my daughter, oh, she's so lovely and she's helpful and she's smart, like that's how you talk about people you like. And often I find in newsrooms, we tend to deficit frame people. Here's all the reasons. And also it's correlated by race, and I think it's correlated by class, right? I think for poor people, especially poor people of color, we deficit frame them a lot. Little Janie Smith, her dad is this, and she grew up around, he went to prison, and, and then versus how we would tell the story of a middle class kid, right? We would say, he's wonderful, he's hardworking, he loves sports. Oh, Tom Brady is his favorite athlete, and he wants to be this when he grows up. Like that's how we tell stories of middle class kids. And it became very apparent to me that deficit framing was the way that we told stories, certainly of people in impoverished communities and people of color all the time. So I just wouldn't do it. And we got in a big fight about it, but because I was the anchor and I got to read the track, like, it was going to be what it was going to be. And I remember we changed it, right? We said Glorious Menifee is a B student. She's starts on the lacrosse team, and she's a peer mentor. Like that's who Glorious is. And yes, her father's an alcoholic. And yes, her mother was a crack addict. And so her mother missed a lot of her childhood because she was in jail. But like Glorious has a life and is a human being outside of these terrible things that had happened to her parents. And it really that story made me very aware of all the ways in which we deficit frame people who are not us, or people who we don't think are like us, or people who we are trying to dehumanize in a way, we feel so sorry for them. There's no, if you don't feel like you have a responsibility to that person, it's very easy to deficit frame them.